The most common gut infection being H. pylori. The majority of them have H. pylori and nobody knows it. But they might have some excess burping, or they might have some reflux, or maybe chronic bloating after they eat or in between meals. See what I mean? See the cascade of just one simple little gut bug? When the gut's inflamed, immediately the brain is inflamed. So it never exists on its own. It typically also accompanies some level of fatigue and depression or anxiety. That's when your neurotransmitters like, serotonin and dopamine and focus and pleasure neurotransmitters, they get slowed down because an inflamed brain, because of an inflamed gut, it doesn't work as efficiently. The deeper dug into the gut changes lives, changes brains.
Hi and welcome to the show. It's Orion. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you are enjoying your day or your night whenever you're listening right now or wherever you're listening. Thank you for being here. Sarah Reilly is a functional medicine nutritionist and burnout recovery specialist. She helps burnt out business professionals who struggle with feeling bloated, foggy, and inflamed to get at the root cause of what is driving their annoying symptoms so they can finally feel energized, pain-free, lean, and clear, and turn back on their body, business, and life again. She combines the principles of holistic clinical nutrition and functional medicine in her customized approach for each client to achieve fast-lasting, positive results. Today we talked about the most important thing in life, according to Sarah. How the health of your gut can actually impact the way you think. How can it impact your life and how you're reacting to everyone around you every day. We mentioned one evil zanolin that can destroy your brain and your gut and how it gets there. Or what can you do to get rid of it? And also how Wi-Fi can actually age your cells and age you. So if you're interested in knowing more about how to become more powerful you, then stay tuned, because this is a wonderful conversation that you're going to get a lot out of. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we begin, maybe you can share one beautiful childhood memory with us.
Oh, a beautiful childhood memory. Oh, boy, I have so many. I definitely, my mother and father, I was so close to. Of one childhood memory that pops into mind was it just popped into my head when my father would come home. He was an art professor, and so we were lucky enough to have him home a lot because he had a really good schedule, right? School vacations off and holidays off and all that. And he would come home and he would lay on the ground and he would be really, really still. And then we kind of walk around him, and then he'd like grab our toes, and then he'd tickle us, tickle us, then he'd let us go. And then we'd circle around him again, and he'd grab us and he'd tickle us and tickle us and tickle us. And that's something that, there's just so many things that flood my mind when I have never been asked that question on a podcast before. And I just had a flood of my childhood. And I'm so blessed for it because I had such amazing parents. They shaped my childhood, and they shaped me.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are some of the things that you got from them?
Mm. You're going to make me cry in like the first 5 minutes of the podcast. Something I learned from them. Whew, that's a big one. I think growing up, I learned compassion and love. They had so much love for me and my sister that it was just kind of oozed, right? Like we didn't grow up with a whole lot, but we grew up with so much love. Love was the currency, and the home was a very safe place. And my there was just such unconditional love. And it was a safe place. And I think they taught me compassion and empathy. They also taught me to work hard. Like, okay, if you want that, honey, you work for that. At age 11, I opened my own bank account because I was working down the street at a daycare because I had a vision of something I wanted. And they're like, okay, honey, if you want that, you save up for it. It took me about a year, but I grew that mentality very young. I went and opened a Wells Fargo bank account at the age of 11. I remember putting my coins up on the counter saying, I want to open a bank account. And, but they taught me, I think, at that base of being honest and being real and being just authentic with who I am. I learned that safety of just like, you're a good person, Sarah. You, and I learned that from them. And it's so interesting because I was literally just having this conversation in my mind with them last night before I went to bed. Like, thank you. You shaped me. You shaped me. And there are so many layers under that, but a lot of it is humility and love and empathy and care for others, because my
Yeah.
parents, they had such pure hearts themselves. Um, and, and yeah, yeah. And then in the end, that's where I learned, I learned unconditional love from them, I think. And then in the end, it's all about unconditional love. And I was their primary caretaker for both of them before they passed on. And they
Wow.
both passed from cancer. And that's what brought me here in our conversation before. And my mama brought me here. And while I was visiting, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, breast
Wow.
cancer. And so I ended up being one of her primary caretakers, along with my stepfather, um, for, about 3 years. And for my father, he passed about 13 years ago. And, excuse me, gosh, time has flown. Yeah, 13 years ago, 12 and a half years ago. And I was his primary caretaker for about 2.5 years at the end. He passed of colon cancer.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and it was the greatest honor of my life to be their primary caretakers at the end, because it's all about love. It's all about love in the end. It's all about love.
That is so beautiful, Sarah. It takes people a very long time to understand that, and even when we get that, we tend to forget. So thank you for that beautiful reminder, and thank you for being this bright light and helping them. Um, I'm sure they're there with you and like loving you and hugging you and
Mhm.
talking to you and guiding you.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing this beautiful thing. And how did your mom's condition made you put you on that path of helping people?
Well, what's interesting is that my parents, if it weren't for my parents, I probably wouldn't, I'm gonna cry. I probably wouldn't be here today, because they're the ones um who got me through a real rough battle with Lyme disease.
Mm,
That then turned, I had some medical procedures through that time when no one knew it was Lyme disease. It went very wrong. And I ended up with severe chemical and electrosensitivity on top of Lyme disease. My parents never doubted me. They never questioned me. They just said, honey, you're going to get through this. And one day you're going to look back. This was a long haul, right? This was from like 25 to 40, right? And they're like, you're going to get through this, honey. And then one day you're going to look back and you're going to see the path and why it made sense. And they never doubted, and they supported me, and they provide haven for me and heart for me, amidst a lot of unknowns and amidst a tremendous amount of physical, emotional, and psychological pain. If anyone's ever been through Lyme disease or severe mercury poisoning and chemical and electrosensitivity where you can't live in the world anymore because it's damaged your immune system so bad, and it's like, and parents who just said, we do whatever it takes, honey. That's what family does. Right. And then my stepfather's in that too. Um, my parents got divorced when I was 21. They still remained friends and loved each other. And my mom met a lovely man who became another one of my parents. And they were together for like 32 years. And he was another pillar that was very supportive, never judged. Um, and they helped me get through it. But something about my mother's case that's ringing true. Both my parents experiences with helping them through cancer were both profound shifts that changed me forever. But my mom's rang true really, really recently with a new case that came in. And it has, because she had breast cancer. And all along she'd had mammograms and it never picked up because she had dense breasts. It never picked up the cancer. And then she also never, the doctors had just left her on hormone therapy from the time she was 42 until the time she was 84. Do the math. It's like that was half of her life. And this is not a comment about HRT at all. What this is a comment about is about, because there's a time and a place for it in a woman's life, but it was never revisited. No one ever checked her hormone metabolism. And so I'm big practice, like before you get on HRT, holy freaking moly, let's check your hormone metabolism to make sure that we know what buckets you are putting your metabolized hormone into, how you're processing your estrogens, how is your body able to get it out, right? And no one ever did that with my mom. No one ever looked to see how is she metabolizing it. None of us had any of the markers, genetic markers for breast cancer, right? But for her, the metabolism, based on what I know about my metabolism now, is like her metabolism and some of her predispositions were probably not so fabulous for getting it effectively out of her body. So it could not stay in to be problematic upon tissue, right? And so that's one thing. There are so many things in which both my parents' cases of cancer, which are both very prevalent cancers, colon and breast cancer, how they affected me in my approach to working with clients. And so that's just something that I get really fired up about, because now everyone's getting on HRT and I'm like, do you know the bucket? What bucket are you putting your estrogen in? How is your body metabolizing your estrogen? Is it a more safe estrogen, or is it more reactive against tissues?
How do
So
people even check that? I didn't know you can check for hormone the
different
way in the body.
yeah, hormone metabolism tests. I run an advanced hormone metabolism test in my practice. Yeah, and so we can look and see, is it going into we call it 2-hydroxyestrogen, or 4 or 16, which are the more potent and toxic, right? And some people just have genetic susceptibility to go right into 4 and 16, right? And so then there are things we can do, or they may have poor methylation or poor glucuronidation, or they may just have dysbiosis. This is why I do a full workup. I do a full investigation on my clients. And just got one the other day who's got really, really high beta glucuronidase. And that's an enzyme that will cleave bound estrogen that's getting ready to leave the body. But someone with high beta glucuronidase, because of high dysbiosis in the gut, it's cleaving bound estrogen that says, okay, we're ready to leave the body and not be a problem. Then beta glucuronidase says, snip, no, you're going to stay in and you're just going to keep circulating around. Right. And then you're dealing with someone's ability to metabolize that and get it out, or this susceptibility for it to react upon tissues. So that's something that just happened the other day. And I got real emotional about it, because I'm like, no one had looked at this woman who had uterine and breast cancer a few years ago, and no one looked. It was under the doctor's noses. They knew she had high beta glucuronidase, but then no one went and looked further down the road at okay, how do we help support this so this is not problematic to someone who is susceptible to estrogen-driven breast cancers, right? So there's a deeper dig I do in practice. But yes, with both my parents' cases, first beginning with my own personal experience of the long 20-year haul I went through recovering from Lyme disease and a severe environmental illness triggered by a mercury chelation that went very wrong, on top of having Lyme disease. And then both my parents' experiences with cancer, right? And so it's been a personal experience that has lent to, yes, my academic studies and my credentials, right? But I have a lot of life experience that taught me the personal history of driving in and digging for answers, not just answers, but then a path to actually help, right? Yeah.
What kind of problems should people come to you with?
A lot of people like overarching, they're feeling fat, bloated, achy, and tired. So underneath that is where I do my detective work. And underneath that is a lot of burnout, which is a lot of hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal dysfunction, meaning that part of our brain can't like coordinate because it's been so overdriven with stress or lack of sleep that it can't coordinate the adrenal glands to efficiently produce their cortisol to help us get up and go. Or there may be a depletion of cortisol because there's been such a surge of it through life of get up and go when they're pooped out, or they're dealing with chronic hypoglycemia, or they're dealing with chronic inflammatory conditions, which also require cortisol, right?
So it all
Or they're,
goes back to stress, it seems like.
I mean, it's a loop, right? It's
Mm,
a loop. So someone could get a chronic infection. That's going to make them more susceptible to stress.
mm,
They're not going to have the bandwidth. There's no way, right? Say someone has a chronic toxicity. They're not going to have the bandwidth. They're going to have a lessened bucket of bandwidth, right? Because that bucket is getting consumed by trying to fight the chronic infection, by trying to subdue the inflammation that that chronic infection is causing, and then trying to replenish itself from the depletion of nutrients and cofactors that that infection is causing. So that's just someone with a chronic infection, of which is runs rapid throughout the world of gut infections, right? For example, the most common gut infection being H. pylori. Just as a real simple example, H. pylori, like the majority of people that I look for, that I bring in as VIP clients that we do the deep data dig on, the majority of them have H. pylori and nobody knows it. But they might have some excess burping, or they might have, some reflux, or maybe chronic bloating after they eat or in between meals, right? And then what happens is with H. pylori, a suppression of hydrochloric acid. And then there goes your firewall to allow in your stomach to allow more bugs to come in and set up camp and say, hey, looks friendly in here. There's no hydrochloric acid to like, there's no firewall. We can just come on in. And then it turns off your own production of hydrochloric acid and your own ability to absorb iron
mm.
and your ability to absorb B12 and to ionize your minerals. So then this depletion happens behind the scenes. And then someone's like, oh, I'm bloated all the time. And then their food's not getting adequately broken down because there's not adequate hydrochloric acid. And then those unbroken down food fragments now become antigens, meaning enemy for the immune system. And then the leaky gut becomes evident and porous. And then those fragments of unbroken down food particles now make their way to where the immune system is trying to protect you. And it says, okay, we have to tag you now and say you are enemy. And then someone has these crazy food sensitivities and are like, I didn't used to be sensitive to this 2 years ago. What's wrong with me now? Right? I'm bloated or get puffy or have, breakouts or runny noses or headaches and achiness. See what I mean? See the cascade of just one simple little gut bug of that
Yeah, I
most
see.
have.
Yes, yes, yes. And I mean, it feels like most of us are bloated. Most of us have some problem, and most of us are not even aware of it because, I mean, we're sometimes are not connected to our body or are ignoring the signals. And okay, this is the way I am right now. Let's just keep going. Um, so when does one need to like stop and say like, hey, I need to go check. I need to go get checked. There's something going on. What are the symptoms for that, for example?
Well, they just feel chronically bloated after they eat. They're like, oh my God, I look 4 months pregnant after I eat. Right. And they're like, but I'm not pregnant. And it starts to affect what they're able to wear. It starts to affect their confidence. I work with a lot of people in leadership positions. They're like, I don't even feel comfortable standing in front of a conference room anymore, or they don't feel comfortable with their partner, or they don't feel comfortable to date, or they don't feel comfortable in intimacy. See, not only that, when that bloating happens in the gut, when the gut's inflamed, immediately the brain is inflamed. So it never exists on its own. It typically also accompanies some level of fatigue and depression or anxiety, right? And here comes that stress loop. Okay, because when the brain's inflamed, that's when your neurotransmitters and all your happy neurotransmitters or get up and go neurotransmitters like, serotonin and dopamine and focus and pleasure neurotransmitters, they get slowed down because an inflamed brain, because of an inflamed gut, it doesn't work as efficiently. They're able to not be able to execute on projects as much. They become exhausted waking up in the morning, let alone to make it through their day, and typically have that like 2 to 4 p.m. like, I want to just curl up and take a nap, or I need coffee, right? Those are the coffee hours, right? People are like, oh, got to get coffee because their gas tank is running empty.
Is bloating the only symptom, or can someone, or
Mm-mm.
what are the other symptoms? Maybe someone doesn't have bloating, but they have something else.
They might
Like,
have, maybe they have constipation or diarrhea, right? No one likes to talk about bowel movements, but it's real. They might have constipation. Do you have 3 healthy bowel movements a day? That's normal. 1 a day, not entirely normal. 1 every other day, absolutely not normal. 1 every few days, that's your route out for toxins and excess cholesterol and hormones and all the things we're exposed to in the environment, right? So it could be digestive distress, problems in the bathroom, they call it, right? It could be reflux. Like, oh, I feel like, but my doctor says I have high hydrochloric acid, so I need to go get on a PPI, right? A Pepsid, something that blocks the hydrochloric acid. No, most often it's actually because of low hydrochloric acid. What's happening there, then it makes the lower esophageal sphincter. It's like a barn door at the end of the esophagus that gets lax and lazy because it doesn't have the tonification of the hydrochloric acid keeping it closed into the stomach. So then they eat, and then what little the hydrochloric acid they are producing, it makes its way up the esophagus, and therein lies heartburn.
hmm.
Heartburn is not a direct indication like, oh, I need to go take a Tums. No, I need to go take a Pepsid. No, I'm not giving medical advice. I'm saying that. I'm saying there is deeper digging that is needed before you get on something like that. Because once you go on one of those, you know, let's just call it a PPI or an anti-acid medication, or even over the counter, like a Tums, for that feeling of too much acid, see if you have something like H. pylori that's actually turning your acid production off. And then that lower esophageal sphincter is getting lazy, and then the acid's making its way up,
Hmm.
right? So
And what
those are some things. And tired, fatigue, because again, you're not able to ionize your minerals. You're not able to absorb B12 or iron effectively. That's big. Yeah.
How do we know if it's mental and not physical, or what is the connection between the mental and the physical?
They're intertwined like this, and such a huge oversight as it's never just mental. You have to look at what's impacting the brain, and most importantly, what is impacting brain inflammation. This is so important because they hand out antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications like they are candy. Oh, well, there's a medication for that. Well, there's also deeper digging for it. But here's the problem. In a 15-minute consult with the doctor, they simply don't have time, nor do they have the toolbox and the hand-holding time to do that deeper dig with a patient to understand, okay, why? Why are you depressed or having anxiety? Why are you stressed? Right? That deeper dig into the gut. That's why gut health is such a cornerstone of my practice. The deeper dug into the gut changes lives, changes brains, right?
Can you,
Because the brain and the gut are intimately intertwined.
yeah, can you share a story of a client and how they showed up in your office and what was their transformation?
Oh, sure. Oh, gosh, let me think. Let me share an extreme one that kind of comes to mind. I mean, there's so many. Um, Let me think of one. She had lost everything. She'd been a chiropractor, and she couldn't work because she had lost like 80% of her memory, and she was in severe
Wow.
depression. right? This is the power of looking up and having a conversation. I met her in the supplement department of Whole Foods.
Wow.
And she was standing there completely bewildered, looking at the probiotics. And I said, "You look like you have a question." Because I can tell when people are like overwhelmed. It's just something I pick up on, right?
I
And
wish you were there every time I went to Whole Foods. It's like every time you go, you stand in front of those shelves. You're like, it's probably good for me. I don't know what's, I'm gonna get a croissant. Bye.
right. I'm overwhelmed. Yes. This is the way many conversations have begun, by looking up and just paying attention to people, and and she said, "I don't know what to do." She's like, "There's so many." And I'm like, "Maybe that's not what you need." Because here's the thing, probiotics aren't for everybody. They're not. Let's say you have
No.
overgrowth of upper GI bacteria. That is the wrong thing for you. Or let's say you've got histamine sensitivity or mast cell activation. That is not the answer for you. And this is where people
This
just,
is news for me because it's everybody that I talk to, like almost everybody, like, yeah, probiotics, it's amazing, take it. And also prebiotics. There is the prebiotics
mm,
and the probiotics, and then
you gotta know what's going on. You gotta know what's going on. And this is why the product I was telling you about that I helped formulate, that's going to be releasing soon, within the next month. It's a non-histamine producer, right? It has very few strains, but they are potent,
hmm.
patent, cutting-edge strains that have never been seen in the United States before, nor most of the world. But anyways, back to what we're talking about, the woman in Whole Foods. Turns out she had had a surgery, right? And they put her on antibiotics in the hospital. She was a successful chiropractor. Well, after that surgery, she couldn't think anymore. She couldn't have patience. She had worked for like 6 months. And she's like, "I don't know what happened." So, anyways, we were able to do a deeper dig on her and repair her gut. She got 80%. She got her memory back and became a chiropractor again. And this is someone who was just lost. And I found her in the world of supplements at Whole Foods,
But what
right?
happened in the surgery? What can happen during the surgery that can cause something like
Well,
that?
it's what happened after the surgery. She was giving really high dose IV antibiotics that killed off her microbiome,
Oh, okay, okay.
right? And that then ensued a tremendous amount of inflammation. Also, on top of that, her inability to really metabolize and process the anesthesia that she'd been given. So it was like a 1-2 punch. And then after that, it was like a flood then of an inability to break down food, leaky gut, chronic inflammation of the brain, to the point, again, when someone's gut's inflamed, their brain is going to be massively inflamed and ensue memory problems and ensue anxiety and depression.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's what's
Um,
happening in the world, not just the United States. Memory loss, anxiety, and depression. Okay. So this woman, had I not found her in the Whole Foods whole body department, I don't know what would have happened. I can't say. But I know that that was a turning point for her, because we got in, we did the work, right? And she was like, "Oh my God, I can think a bit again. I can get my life back." And that's what happens with so many people. She wasn't a chronic weight issue, but like a lot of my clients are, but she had this chronic bloating. Why am I looking 4 months pregnant, like 20 minutes after I eat for like 2 hours?
wow.
Right. Um, and she had extraordinary fatigue and depression and anxiety. And
So
she
what
couldn't
is
think.
the, yeah, so you explained that leaky gut is
Mhm.
basically something going through the barrier of the stomach into the
Yeah.
bloodstream and
Mhm.
lowering your immune system.
Well, what it
Because
doesn't lower your immune system. It can also overactivate your immune system, be a doorway for autoimmunity. Like, the web is so big, what happens here. But your gut lining should be like a tight brick wall, right?
mm,
And then what happens with the leaky gut, it becomes porous, right? And then particles that should not be making their way across this delicate barrier between your gut and your bloodstream, basically where your immune system is, becomes porous. Microbes, undigested food particles make their way across there. And then the immune system says, "Hey, your enemy, I need to tag you so that the body attacks you. And that's where people start getting sensitive to foods. And that's also where autoimmunity can ensue, because that's where the immune system becomes overactivated, right?
And how do
And
you heal it? What's good for leaky gut?
yeah, well, that's a process, right? It's not like it's one supplement. It's a process. Again, we need to see what's inflaming your gut. Is it bugs that don't belong in your belly? Right? Is it low hydrochloric acid that's compromising you? Do you have a depletion of glutathione, which is your body's master antioxidant that always precedes leaky gut? Do you basically, what's aggravating your gut lining? Are
Mm.
you attacking your own gut lining, right? Unknowingly. The stress, high cortisol will degrade the lining of that delicate lining of the small intestine, right? Different chemicals and toxins we're exposed to. Consumption of gluten gives you leaky gut. It produces something called zonulin, regardless of whether you have celiac or gluten sensitivity. It produces this breakdown of the gut lining no matter who you are. It depends on your ability to repair that gut lining. It's the basic fact of the gluten protein. Degrades the gut lining, right?
I have a love-hate affair with gluten. I go through phases where I'm gluten-free and I'm not touching gluten, and
Yeah.
then I give up. I go I go back. What's
Mhm.
your take on gluten? Nothing, medium, uh, should we never consume it?
It's such a big question, right? It's such a big question. I mean, it's such a big question. Some people can, here's the thing. Um, for my clients who come in compromised, I absolutely recommend not to consume gluten, because I see what's going on behind the scenes on labs. It's clear, right? There is evidence of an inflammatory immune response going on in the gut. Zonulin is going to make that leaky gut worse, right? So would I give gluten to a child? Absolutely not. I personally would not, with what I know, what I know clinically,
Ah,
right?
did you just reread my mind? You just read my mind. That was my next question. Well, like, but how can you take a kid off of gluten where everybody's eating gluten? And honestly,
Everybody's
when
eating
you're
gluten.
in a
Yeah,
hurry, it's like the easiest thing. Just
it's the easiest thing, because the commercial industry has made it the easiest thing. But
mm.
there's emerging industries that have, gluten-free products, that are a bridge to it.
But a lot of
Gluten
them
is
are kind of like crappy flours that like corn flour and stuff that I don't want to put in my body. A lot of the gluten-free stuff is not that
yeah,
healthy.
yeah. And again, there's also different forms. Let's say you go with a real high, a real ancestral grain of gluten that's never been touched by hybriding. Maybe that will be okay for someone who doesn't have a reactivity or sensitivity, but it doesn't mean that they won't react to that gluten protein in the future. It
Mm.
is a problematic protein, and it is a protein that has been so manipulated in the world that we really don't 100% know what we are getting. And that's the baseline truth of it. And, um, and, this may make some people angry and defensive, but it's just like zonulin is produced when the gluten protein is consumed. Zonulin is like an enzyme that breaks down the gut lining.
Zonulin sound like something out of Star Wars, like the Dark Lord Zonulin that comes and like destroys the gut.
It does. And the blood-brain barrier too. So it's never just the gut,
Really,
right?
the blood-brain barrier?
Yeah, when your gut barrier is impaired, it sends off the same inflammatory cascade that degrades the blood-brain barrier. So again, it's never just the gut. It activates this inflammatory process on the gut lining, which then sends like quorum sensing, like cell phones, like Houston, we have a problem in the gut. And the brain's going to be like, well, then so do I, because we were created out of the same tissues and have the same like quorum sensing walkie-talkie communication between each other, right? And there are certain inflammatory immune pathways that get activated that also break down the blood-brain barrier.
So
So
what do you eat a day? Like what do you
what
eat?
do I?
Mm.
What do I eat?
Mhm.
Well, I eat like so for breakfast, I might have like a bison veggie saute. That's just one example, right? So that'll
Mhm.
be bison, which is or maybe a grass-fed beef, or maybe lamb, or maybe turkey, or maybe ground chicken. But I'll have a protein, an animal protein, veggie, healthy fat combination with some amazing like Baja Gold sea salt to get me some extra minerals in there. And so I've got my proteins and my fats, a little bit of carb, not always carb. I don't do grains or legumes because my gut was tremendously impacted by Lyme disease when I had it.
Mm.
And so that's another reason why I know so much about the gut, because I had literally lost my ability to process and digest food. It got
Wow.
really extreme, and I was told to blend my food for the rest of my life. And I was like, nah, I don't think so. There's something else going on. And so I was diagnosed with gastroparesis at the age of 32, but no one knew at that time I had Lyme disease, right? Um, Again, the deeper dig did not happen in my care at that time. Um, and so then for lunch, oftentimes I'll make myself a smoothie, and not a fruit smoothie, heavy fruit smoothie, but this is going to have protein in it. Basically, oftentimes like a good bone broth protein. And I love paleo meal. It's the one that I recommend to a lot of my clients. It may be a different protein powder depending on the person. But for me, I'll have some sort of a low histamine. Um, Now I do something else. I'm using a combination of different collagens, which are low histamine, and fiber like flaxseed, some coconut milk, non-oxalate leafy greens, low oxalate leafy greens, a little bit of healthy fat. And
Ha-
then some blueberries, right? So
mm.
that's my lunch. Oftentimes, because I'm busy with clients and I'm smoothies easy to get down.
So oxalate is the spinach and kale, for example.
Yes. Um, Kale is lower than spinach, but my smoothies are not going to have like red raspberries or blackberries or Swiss chard or spinach or beets in it, because those are higher oxalate, which are also inflammatory. For myself, I keep them out.
Mm.
But and then for dinner, I'm going to probably have a dinner that looks a lot like my breakfast. So I try to get 30 grams of protein. So I get that nice bolus of protein in each of my meals, at least my anchor meals, which are breakfast and dinner. And then I have a very fortified smoothie for lunch, high in protein, fat, and fiber, with a little bit of low glycemic fruit in it. Um,
Do you
yeah.
consume
And then
eggs?
for a while I did not because I was sensitive, but now I consume them intermittently.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah, I
wow.
consume them intermittently. It depends. Everybody's different. Eggs can be problematic because people consume them so much. And so I was off them literally for a few years, and then now I can introduce them back in slowly. But I had developed a sensitivity
Mm.
to the egg white and then eventually the yolk. And so I gave myself time away. And then I do food sensitivity testing at least once a year just to see where I'm at. And so my immune system had calmed down, and now I introduce them in because they are a beautiful protein source. And
Mm.
if someone's not sensitive, but what I find in testing is that because people consume them, they're just one of those crutches we have for breakfast. They're so easy, right? Um, but then in that, people consume a lot of eggs. And then a lot of people become sensitive to it.
Mm.
Yeah.
So how can I take my child who's 6 and take him out of, pita bread and I don't know, oats and pancakes and French toast
Mhm.
into eating more of your style? Like I don't think I can take him completely out of it, and I
Mhm.
don't think it's kind of fair for him. He's a child.
Mhm.
Is it that damaging to a child?
Well, it depends on the child. So let's look at that, right? I'm not saying everyone globally has to, 100% stop eating gluten. I'm saying there can be problems in its continuous consumption. And
Mm.
when you start a child off young eating gluten, they've got a lot of years ahead of them of eating gluten, right? And depending on the child, what I see now is so much sensitivity to it as a child. So if your child has a sensitivity to gluten, is it fair to give the child gluten, right? It's just a different angle of looking at it, right?
Mm,
Um, and yeah, it is a shift, it's a change, especially when so much of society, depending on where you live, may consume gluten. Um, and you know what you can do is take steps, like make sure, say if there's not an option where you live, try to go organic gluten. So you're at least not getting those components of glyphosate and all the
mm,
pesticides on it. Go organic gluten if you can, right? Um, and really be particular about what kind of gluten you're giving a child. And if you can, get some sensitivity testing done on the child. Are they sensitive to gluten? And get, you know, a deeper look for the child so that you can have some discretion. Um, but you know, again, if you're like, well, then try to go organic, because
mm,
if it's not organic, it's going to be highly hybridized. It's going to be loaded with glyphosate, which is going to tear up the gut in itself, right?
mm.
Along with zonulin from from the gluten, and it's going to be loaded with pesticides.
Wow, I'm gonna change my diet. Honestly, when I lived in the States, like white organic flour was very easy to find everywhere. You go to Costco, you get the big organic flour thing, and you work with it. And you have the acorn, the ancient
Almond,
grain.
ancient grain.
I forgot. I probably not. I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Anyways, now that I'm in Israel, I mean, I find like I shop, I buy organic produce, I get like grass-fed beef and all that, but it's not as easy. And
Right.
and and
Yeah.
in my culture, like wow, the pastries, like there's like a million holidays. Every holiday has a bunch of pastries, and
Mm,
yeah, it's quite challenging, but it's really inspiring me right now talking to you
mhm.
to start with baby steps. You know, you don't have to shift everything, but you gotta be conscious about what you're doing and not go for what's easy.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the practices are different over there. So is Israel specific? I know over in Europe, you know, the practices are different. It's not as hybridized of a gluten
It's
typically.
hybridized, it's the
Yeah,
same.
exactly. Exactly. It's still, I have
Even
clients
in
who
Italy,
still,
it's hybridized now,
yeah,
a lot of them.
so sad.
Yeah,
So
even
that,
Italy.
yeah. So it's just a reality of the world. It is a
Hmm.
protein that is highly inflammatory to the gut. I'm not going to mince words. It's going to produce zonulin. I don't care who you are. It's just the way we're made. It's something we produce. Our gut is saying, ouch, no, thank you.
I should
This is
put like a sign saying zonulin on my refrigerator to remind myself. Like zonulin. Oh, okay. We're gonna change
zonulin.
it. We're gonna
Think
make
of it,
sweet potatoes
it's
and
like
eggs for breakfast.
it's like a pair of scissors. It's like a pair of scissors. If your gut lining is like this, right? So these are all your microvilli on the lining of, let's just look at your small intestine, right? Microvilli, this is where you absorb nutrients. Okay. With zonulin, what happens, and this should be like a brick wall so particles don't make it through to your bloodstream and your systemic circulation, right? Where your immune system lies to protect you. But then here comes zonulin and it goes, yeah, I'm like, oh, okay. So now when you have, say, some food and it's not breaking down in your tummy adequately, that broken down food fragment makes its way across here, right? And then microbes, fungi, bacteria make their way to your systemic circulation. Now, all of a sudden, you have an inflammatory immune response, and you're going to have a hyperreactive kid. You're going to have a kid who becomes disobedient. Why? Because their brain is getting inflamed, because their
Mm,
guts get inflamed, then it's going to inflame their brain.
mm,
Okay. So that's just one angle of looking at it, or it's going to inflame anybody's brain. They might feel a little foggy or a little tired. But here's the tricky part about gluten, too: it activates like opiate receptors in the brain,
yes.
right? Along with dairy. It's just the glutamorphins and the casomorphins, and it just like it lights it up. So it
So
creates an
no dairy
addiction.
as well? Dairy, no go.
Dairy can be problematic. I mean, the casein, again, it depends on the type. It depends on the person, but your average. Conventional carton of milk in the grocery store, avoid. It's going to be loaded with hormones and antibiotics. It's going to be high in estrogens, and it's going to be probably reactive for the brain. Why? Because it's going to be activating those casein morphins, right? These opiate receptors in the brain that say, oh my gosh, that feels so good. We're just
I
talking to
think
someone.
the more you consume gluten, the more you consume dairy, the more you want to consume them. And it
No,
is
but
a
it's
form of addiction, like you said, if it activates those morphine receptors. That's what
opiate
you said.
receptors.
Opiate
Yeah.
receptors in the brain, then we just want to consume more and more and more.
Yes.
So no dairy, no gluten. What do you think people should be checked for? And what type of a service provider should anyone go to check themselves, and how often?
Yeah. First of all, going back to, dairy, in some forms and in some ways, it can be, it is, there are some cases where maybe some, young children need it. But again, looking at, or where people have access like raw, farm fresh dairy
I
is
used to
loaded.
have access to that. I used to, like, there was a place in Davie, and they like they were selling raw milk and colostrum
Yeah.
and
I mean, we're talking type here, right? Yeah. Type. Your conventional again, at the grocery store, let's look at baby steps. Your
yeah.
conventional carton, right, here is loaded with antibiotics, hormones, all the stuff they're injecting the cows with to make them produce more.
Mm.
And it can be also reactive for certain people depending on their sensitivity. Now, there are other options that you can get. A, go organic. Then you're not getting the hormones and the antibiotics. Right? Now, whether someone has a sensitivity to that or not, that's an individual thing.
Hmm.
I see it a lot in practice because, again, I'm working with adults who had been consuming it for a long period of time, and they finally realize, oh my God, it makes me bloated because it's inflaming their gut. Then they're like, and I get so foggy, it inflames my brain. Just had an 82-year-old client yesterday, and he's like, I cannot even eat the A2 organic, you know, mozzarella cheese or milk because it's just for him. He has that inflammatory immune response to it. Everybody's different, and start out with baby steps, but take into consideration that these can be highly reactive also and highly addictive, especially for kids, and for adults. I know adults who very much are addicted to milk still.
I
Um,
love pizza.
yeah. Yeah. And there's different choices, you can make for cheeses. Again, go organic.
Yeah.
And, it has some nutritional properties that are really great. Not everyone's sensitive to dairy. And in the midst of a varied diet, if that's all someone's eating like every day as a major staple of their diet, that's problematic. But to sprinkle it in, and if it's like organic or, just really made in a high quality, in a respectful way, in a non-highly manufactured way. I mean, there's in the highly manufactured way of cheese and dairy products, it's toxic because of what gets put into it, right? That's a whole
Wow,
nother
yeah.
conversation. Okay. I went off on a soapbox. You were asking me another question.
I was asking you about testing. How often should we go? Who should we go see? How often? What should
Yeah.
we look for?
I think the best thing to do is start out with a functionally trained practitioner. That's a good start. And then look for a good functional trained practitioner who's seasoned and who has, a lot of, good case studies behind them, interview them, and open your world up to looking under the hood in kind of a different way than what you may do at the conventional doctor's office,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where they really only have in the United States, they got about 15 minutes and it's going to be quick. And it's going to be pretty general unless there is a very specific kind of problem, right? But what happens here in the United States is once you go to the doctor, you're applied a disease code. And then that disease code is what applies to your pharmaceuticals and your procedures, period, right? So when you go to a functionally trained doctor, functional medicine, who's trained in functional medicine, then you're going to have someone who's going to look under the hood in a different way and look more at a root cause approach as to, all right, why are you having brain fog? Why are you having headaches? Why are you achy? Why are you bloated? right? And then they can start doing that detective work where they look deeper. And the gut's always going to be a part of someone's work and looking. It's a preliminary, it's not the only cause, but it's such a cornerstone of what can be generating a lot, as an example, that can be generating a lot of these symptoms.
Mm-hmm. If
Yeah.
someone who's listening wants to start getting better today, what is
Mhm.
the first step they should do?
First of all, you know what I'm going to say, I'm going to say sleep, because without sleep, everything else falls by the wayside. So giving yourself a few hours off your blue light devices, your cell phone, your iPad, your computer, letting your brain really settle into so it can start producing melatonin for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And try to get at least 7 hours of sleep in a room that is totally and completely dark, that does not have a Wi-Fi router in it or anywhere near it, and with your cell phone on airplane, if it happens to be in the same room,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can get your restorative sleep. That's a whole nother topic. But these devices that are right next to people's heads or in the next room, their Wi-Fi router, it's not allowing people to drop into truly restorative sleep, because it's gonna aggravate it's kind of like a knocking on the door all night of your brain, because
What do you
it's
think about, yeah, what do you think about
stimulating.
smart homes and smart switches?
I think
They have
I think
Wi-Fi in the walls.
yeah, I think biologically, for our own biological organism as a human being, I think it's a bad idea.
Mm.
I think it's a bad move, and I will be very honest about that. Part of my journey was extreme electrosensitivity, extreme, to the point I could not sit in front of a TV screen, or let alone a computer screen, or be exposed to artificial light, or be anywhere near Wi-Fi,
Mm.
right? Me recovering from that, I learned a tremendous amount about electromagnetic fields and about the susceptibility of the body under high exposure and chronic exposure. Our distance and rest from those devices is imperative for the rhythm of the body and for our own ability to fight off disease,
Yeah.
to fight off stress. So many people are stressed because they're not sleeping adequately. I see this on labs, on tests I run. Um, it's profound. It's a big issue. That's a whole nother conversation, but it's big because it surrounds everyone. And some people say, well, you know what? It's everywhere. So what's the point? No, 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 no. It, it, it is everywhere, but distance is what makes the difference.
Mm. Yeah, we have a couple of devices that are like we have the quantum block and that harmonizes the EMFs, and we
Mhm.
have a Soma Veda that helps with Wi-Fi exposure as well. Because yeah, I mean it's everywhere, and there are big antennas everywhere, and if you live in a crowded neighborhood, you'll definitely feel it. So
Mhm. Yeah, and you
yeah.
can't control what your neighbors do, but you can control in your own home. Like, I don't have Wi-Fi in my home. I
Mm-hmm.
have, and I work on an Ethernet wired connection. Even my mini Starlink, if I'm out in the wilderness, the Wi-Fi router is turned off, and you can do that on a Starlink Mini, and I'm able to work from Ethernet cord from my mini Starlink, right? I don't sit on Wi-Fi. It's extremely toxic, and that will create stress and inflammation like nobody's business.
Oh wow. So much to learn, so much to
And
do.
break down collagen. It breaks down the hydroxyproline in the collagen.
No.
Yeah, it's real. There's a sequence of a lot of things. That's not all, but I mean, that grabs people's attention. They're like, what, my collagen? But never mind about the cell membranes and the antioxidant potential of the body, right? So it's a tricky subject
So
because
so it ages you?
I'm going to say that it can, based on research, it can age appearance, and it can age your cells. I mean, the signals that it's turning on and the inflammatory process that it's turning on is premature aging. It is the pathway of premature aging.
Wow. It's a huge topic. We need to,
It's a whole nother topic.
yeah, but still, like, thank you
It's
for
a whole
sharing
nother
all that
topic.
beautiful information. Thank you so much. That was fascinating. It was wonderful. Thank you for being here. Before we say goodbye for now, I know you have a gift for our audience. But
Yeah.
before that, uh, what are your three top tips to living a stellar life?
Mm. First of all, sleep. Get your sleep. That is the modulator of all things. You can take the most fancy supplements, eat the most awesome diet. If you are not restoring all body systems, which are still a mystery to science, if you're not truly restoring at night, eh, the other stuff is not going to hold up. Um, I think fill yourself and surround yourself with all that nourishes you. That be the consumption of nourishing food that truly nourishes you and supports you, the surrounding of people that truly nourish you and fill you, and the activities of life and this world that truly nourish you and fill you. That's number two. That's nourishment of like a global sense of nourishment. And then number three, make yourself a priority to get to the root cause. Like acknowledge if something's feeling suboptimal for you amidst the global nourishment you're doing for yourself, right? And amidst getting good sleep. If something is off, get help.
Mm,
It can really help you. Like make yourself that priority to have the courage to take that step to say something's not right. Something is off. I need help. Make yourself that priority to help yourself close the gap of despite the global nourishment and the sleep that you're getting, make yourself a priority to close
mm,
the gap where you are and where you want to be.
beautiful. Oh,
Mhm.
Sarah, where can people find you? And also, I know you have the gift for the audience.
Yes, absolutely. They can find me at getnourished.net. That's GETNOURISHED.net. And then I do. And then also my socials on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. And then I do have a free gift. It's called the 15 Darn Things That Keep You Stuck, right? So talking about that, filling that gap, right? Like what's in the gap. These are 15 things that a lot of people have probably maybe even never known that are actually driving you to continue to feel fat, bloated, achy, and tired. Um, and kind of the first step to fill that gap.
Beautiful. Sarah, thank you so much for your wisdom and your time and everything that you shared here today.
Oh, thank you. It's been such a delight talking with you and an honor to be here on your show. Thank you for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you. Remember to sleep. Uh, Surround yourself with good people, good nourishment, good food, great activities. Make yourself a priority and get the help you need and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.